Brian? Okay. Brian? Yeah. Victor? And Despina will be arriving soon. Okay, so we can start. Good morning to everybody. My name is Lorenzo Pupillo, and I lead the Cybersecurity Accepts initiatives. And I would like to give to all of you a great welcome. I should say probably welcome back, because this is for the Cybersecurity Accepts initiatives, the first in-person meeting after the pandemic. For myself, I came back to Brussels after 28 months. You know, it's a long time, but it's a good sign that things are going back to normal, although as we know, probably this would be a new normal. When I invite Despina, she said, Lorenzo, I'm very pleased to come. It is a good sign that things are, you know, getting, going back to normal to some extent. And this, you know, she answered when it was Sunday. I was in the US. It was very nice. I mean, usually people do not answer on Sunday, but it was good, you know. It was a good, yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think today, I mean, if you think what a great occasion, you know, to go back to an in-person meeting and talk about skills, something strongly related to the human being, and to the fact that all of you, all of us probably consider cybersecurity as a collective responsibility, and so human beings are at the center of this process to make the cyberspace more reliable. In these 28 months, we have done extensive work for the Commission on different projects, like the NIS review, the preparatory study for the Cyber Resilience Act, and now we are engaging the support for the Cyber Resilience Act, as probably you know, will be the first year in the world, you know, to put forward an horizontal regulation for digital products. And I have to say that all the time that we work on this project, we were realized that we need more and more ad hoc profile, you know, people, skills, technical skill, also soft skill, but not only for companies, but also for regulatory agency, market surveillance agency. Think about the fact that now, given the wealth of regulation the European Commission is putting forward, you know, almost each regulation AI has ad hoc competence for regulator, for instance, cyber resilience to the act that was the Data Act and other regulation. So there is this great emphasis on increasing resilience and the need of better skills. Today we will approach this topic, cyber resilience, skill shortage, and augmented capacity to artificial intelligence. I think that we should start making, as some researcher, Tommaso De Zan, for instance, from Oxford, mentioned the difference between skill shortage and skill gaps. In other words, there are two issues here. One is the lack of professionals, so it's a quantitative issue, but also a qualitative issue, the skill gap. In other words, sometimes we have professionals, but we don't have the ad hoc profile that we need. Okay, this is something that we need to take into account also during our discussion. And then we'll try to address you know, some approaches that, you know, companies are putting forward, but also institutions are putting forward to approach this this topic. one important piece of this effort, and this is also led by Trellix, that we really appreciate the presence here of Brian, the CEO of Trellix, and also the support to this event, also the support of Trellix to SEPS initiative in general. Some companies have adopted a blend of human expertise powered by AI and machine learning. There's potential to counterbalance the skill shortage. We have done, this is based on artificial intelligence. At SEPS, we have done an ad hoc task force on AI cybersecurity, and we put on the desk on the back of this room some copies of the report. You are free to enjoy to get it, in which also we mentioned this issue. And the idea was that AI, to some extent, essentially machine learning, free, the researcher, for instance, in the threat analysis, to they free the researcher from more, let's say, repetitive work, and they allow the researcher to have a better life to some extent, to focus on more, let's say, a value-added task. It is something that, for instance, Trellix is putting forward extensively in its today's practice. But there are, some consideration need to be made, for instance, in terms of application. What is the range of application of this approach? Threat analysis only helps for SOC, and so it's something that need to be looked at carefully. There are also some different approach, like the traditional approach, like outsourcing. There are some company, and in this sense, we have today with us Vishal Salvi, is the CISO Infosys, is an Indian company that is approaching this issue of skill shortage through outsourcing. And so this is also another way of approaching skill shortage. I have to say that outsourcing reminded me, I mean, it has been at the basis of globalization. But now there is, as you know, globalization in the past was based on search of efficiency. Now it seems to be the company has more in search of resilience. We have seen also the geopolitical component now related to cybersecurity. And so it's not just, they don't want to just do business per se, but also tend to do business with maybe like-minded type of countries, So this is an issue that needs to be addressed. But again, also for outsourcing, is this limited as a limited scope, for instance, only for incident responses? So these are all issues that we'll try to address today. And we have a very interesting, very qualified panel today. So we have Brian Palma, CEO of Trellix. Then on the EU institution, we have Despina Spanau, Head of Cabinet Commission Vice President Margarita Schinas. Then we have the European Parliament with Victor Negrescu, Member of the European Parliament, a rapporteur of the Shaping Digital Education Policy File. We have also Vishal Salvi, this remotely connected. Vishal is the CISO of Infosys. And then we have Enisa also, is doing an extensive work on cyber skill framework. We have Fabio Di Franco, Enisa cybersecurity expert and cyber skill framework project coordinator. The event is on the record. It's not streamed, but we will record and we'll put on the website. And so we'll have also memory of this. You can go back and see again if you like. So we will manage this workshop today in two parts. First, I'll give the floor to all the speakers to give the main point of their view of these issues, and then we will open the discussion. Okay, so two parts. Okay, and so I'm pleased to give now the floor to Brian Palma.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here. It's good to be here in person. I flew in this morning to a beautiful day here in Brussels. Very, very nice day and great to see people together again. So I thought what I'd do is just start out a little bit with Trellix so you make sure you know who we are. We are the combination of McAfee Enterprise and FireEye. We brought those two companies together late last year, rebranded the company to Trellix in January. And the name Trellix really comes from the notion of a trellis, which is a lattice-like structure for growing plants and trees. And part of the reason was, as we got out and thought about the name of the new company, we started to think about this concept of living security. What we found in the market was there was lots of military type analogies, striking and battling and fighting and reds and blacks. And we said, well, that's not really where the cybersecurity market's going, right? Where it's going is being flexible, being open, being extensible, being able to adapt. And we thought about this concept of living security, and that led us to move our branding and our name to Trellix. So we're very happy to be here. I want to thank the council for their work. I want to welcome my colleagues too. It's going to be a good discussion. I thought what I would do is just open up for 5 or 10 minutes, turn it over to a few of the other folks, and then really get to the discussion. I think that's the exciting part about all being back together, is we can have a discussion in the room, which is always fun. So a couple of weeks ago, earlier in June, I was at the RSA conference and did a keynote around soulful work and talking about talent and the skills gap. We mentioned the report that we commissioned here with the folks from the council, and that's obviously what we do every day. Every day we're working on machine learning, we're working on software, we're working on ways to be more efficient, and that's what we do as a company. We build cybersecurity software. However, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and in the spring we started to think about it within Trellix, and I said, we've had the same problem for 20 years, which is the skills gap and shortage. And what are we going to do about that? Because technology is definitely a piece of the puzzle, and machine learning can help us close the gaps, but we're always going to need talented people in our industry. So what I did was talked a little bit about how I think we can run an industry-wide campaign to recruit people into cybersecurity. And we'll talk a little bit. What we did in advance of that was we did a study, a couple thousand people globally, and I'll show you some of the results of that study. I think the first piece of the puzzle is this talent gap. And depending on who you talk to, this number is from ISC Squared, a global organization that says there's basically a 2.7 million person gap in the cybersecurity business. Depending what study you look at, it's really range bound between 1.5 million and 3.5. I could give you data points across that depending which study you look at. This one's kind of in the median. That's why we use it. But it's a big gap. And to overcome this gap, what it would really take is an increase of 65% to be able to defend our critical assets. So it's a significant gap that we have out there. The gap really persists across markets. So similar in North America, similar in Europe, and similar in Asia. There's not a lot of difference when we think about it. So if you were to take the size of the market and just apply these statistics, that's pretty accurate for the most part. As I said, I think, historically, one of our best feeders into solving this problem has been via the military or via the government. It's where a lot of training gets done. It's where a lot of people get involved with cybersecurity. Many of them stay and working in the government, and some make the transition to the private sector. But outside of that, we really haven't had much of a training ground, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. The second piece that we spent a lot of time on is, if you look at this data here, it basically says most of the people that we have in the industry have come from cybersecurity. And what I talked about at RSA is, how do we open that aperture, right? There's lots of people with technical skills. There's lots of people in other industries that we can recruit, we can go get. And I made the argument that the work we do in cybersecurity is soulful work. And there's a lot of people right now working in technology. I use the example of social media because it's easy, that are questioning, who do they work for and what's their purpose? And my point was, we have a really strong purpose in cybersecurity. We should be using that to recruit talent from other industries, from other fields. We can obviously train them on the specifics of cybersecurity. The next piece I would say is when we look at talent in this industry, pretty traditionally, people look for what I just showed you, was 89% have a degree in cybersecurity. They have a college, university level degree. That model seems to break down today. And part of our survey showed that 93% of people believe they could develop their own skills. And the reality is, with online education and the democratization of education, there are a lot of people out there who may not have a college degree, but would be great and would have a lot of capabilities to bring to our industry, whether training themselves or otherwise. So there's a pool of people out there historically we haven't tapped into that I think we should. Again, we have a 2.7 million shortage. When you have a shortage, you really should be, like I said, casting a broader net, a bigger tent, looking for different populations of people. One of those populations may be non-college educated folks from across the globe. This is not surprising at all. I talked about this as well, which is we're an incredibly undiverse group of people if you look globally. It's predominantly a male industry, it's predominantly a white industry, and there's lots of opportunities globally to get more diverse folks into cybersecurity. And that's something that I'll talk a little bit later. We're specifically focused on at Trellix, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the programs that we're implementing. But again, when you have a shortage, you should be expanding the pool, not contracting the pool. Historically, what have we done? We've put barriers in place, whether it's college degree, whether it's not going into diverse pools, and that's hurt us. And you can see the numbers, our gap continues to widen. You know, I think, again, when we think specifically across Europe, these statistics come out of Europe, not surprising. Many folks think that there's a lot more that can be done to support cybersecurity professionals. Really doesn't matter which sector you're in. Again, whether that's training, whether that's policy work, which we're going to hear a little bit more about, there's more to be done in this industry. There's more investment, and most of the professionals in the industry feel that way. So finally, I think when we think about solutions, the program that we're driving at Trellix, first of all, starts in primary or early education. So we think there's a lot more opportunity to start earlier on cybersecurity, whether it's at age 5 through age 15 in the schools, whether that's through competitions, whether that's through camps, whether that's through specific course and curriculum, whether it's through awareness. There's a lot of opportunity here to get kids involved much earlier. I know even with my own children in the US, they're very, very technology savvy. They're not very cybersecurity savvy, and they're not getting that education really anywhere. They're not getting that piece of the puzzle. They get it from their dad, which means they just don't listen. But I'd love for somebody else to be helping with that mission, right? And helping educate them as to what is cybersecurity for two reasons. One, obviously, to help protect themselves and help us protect the world. But two is it's a great career, right? And we want to seed early on for children across the globe. This is a place that we need talent, and you can have a good career, and it can be a fulfilling career. So we've got a specific program at Trellix focused on this segment of the population. The next segment of the population is really that 16 to 25, those students that are in college, in university, or recent grads. How do we get them? How do we do a targeted recruiting campaign? And in my RSA speech, I used the notion, there was this campaign in the US many years ago called Got Milk. And it was about the milk industry coming together because people were drinking more soda and juice and the milk industry was being hurt. So they created this campaign called Got Milk, and they got a bunch of famous people to talk about how great milk was. And it really helped the industry. I was saying we need something similar for cybersecurity, which is an industry campaign, right? Doesn't matter if you come work at Trellix or Microsoft or CrowdStrike. We want to recruit people into our industry, right? And we can do that collectively. So that was one of the things that we've kicked off, and I'll finish with how we've branded that campaign. But this is also about internships. It's also about apprenticeships. It's about recruiting. It's about getting out there and giving young, and students, recent grads, the opportunity to get engaged in cybersecurity while they're still in school. After they're out of school, it's allowing them to break in potentially through apprenticeship programs and then through training, as I mentioned earlier, that could be online. And then the final group is just mid-career professionals, folks that might be in other industries. They might work in tech companies already. They may not. They may be in financial services. They may be in manufacturing. We've gone out and found a lot of these folks, and they bring an important and diverse perspective to cybersecurity. We can get them the training they need to ramp up. If they're bright, if they're motivated, this is a real opportunity for us. And there are a lot of people out there who want to break into cybersecurity. Having an organized program for training, developing, again, apprenticeships to be able to bring people into the industry is very, very important. We ran a program in India for women returning to work. There are a lot of women who had taken time off to either raise children, take care of sick parents. They were re-entering the workforce. What we did at Trellix was we brought them into our company. We did it in cohorts. Our first cohort was 12 women, and we allowed them to have an internship and work in different areas of the business for 6 months, and then found a job that they could, get back into. It helped with that transition. It allowed us to tap into a pool of people that otherwise we would not have tapped into. So I would say I mentioned a bit about what we're doing and the importance of tapping into diverse groups. We have a program at Trellix with an organization called GoTara, where we put our women through a program that's mentorship, it's training. We do cohorts of about 25. We're on our 3rd cohort. And again, really tapping into those diverse communities. And then at RSA, we announced our partnership with HACE, which is the Hispanic Association in the US for mid-career professionals. So we're now tapped into a diverse group of people who are interested in making a career change. We're working with HACE to develop a training program that gets people the skills they need to join the cybersecurity workforce. So I'll close with, this was the campaign that we launched. I do soulful work, #soulfulwork, and it's starting to pick up some momentum online. And really it's about cybersecurity is soulful work. There's a lot of people out there who should want to join us on this mission. But at the end of the day, it's about the numbers I showed you in the beginning. There's a 2.7 million person gap. We have to try some different things. And we have to come together as an industry, a global, globally to really reduce this gap. So I'll pause there. I know we've got some other folks that are going to come up and share some thoughts as well. And I look forward to the discussion and questions after that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Brian, for your presentation, and especially, because you detail, a very precise program, to tackle this issue. And so I would like to give the floor now to Despina, and to find out, what the Commission is doing in this domain.
You prefer me to stand, or am I right from here? Yes, let's change. I'll speak from here.
Yeah.
I find it, and good morning to everyone. It is great that we can do this again. It's very liberating, and let's hope we will continue like this. Thank you, Lorenzo, for organizing this. I jumped on the opportunity when you very kindly invited us to join, because it couldn't have been more timely for us to discuss skills. So personally, who I am, I work, I'm the head of cabinet of Vice President Skinas. I'm here with my colleague who's at the back, Chris Eurigian, who's our financial advisor in the team, and who deals with economics. And it's not by accident he's here. He's dealing with economics, digital, and skills. So you will see where we're going. And we have a unique chance with our vice president, because he's the vice president of this very particular title, promoting the European way of life. And this is a portfolio that included health. So we had to deal with COVID and ensure we maintain our European way of life through COVID. It has migration, it has security, it has education, it has skills. So we discovered we had this fantastic capacity to match what we can do in security with what we do in skills. And as we are now right in the middle of the Commission mandate, so we've just a few days ago reached the 2.5 years timing, we're passing more into things that we can implement. We will be no longer proposing very much. There's still a bit left by the end of the year, but for the last 2 years of the mandate, as you know, we're looking into finishing all the proposals that are being negotiated and then implementing. So we're looking to do something on cybersecurity skills that will be meaningful. Not that we don't do things. The problem with the European Commission is that we are an enormous organization with numerous programs. And the role of the vice presidents is actually to try and coordinate what is in the various fields and bring it together. And we have discovered with my colleagues that there's a richness of opportunities for cybersecurity skills in European policies, but nobody has linked them. So we're looking at how to do that, and we need your help, and you have to come forward and tell us how to do this best. There is money in the Digital Euro program for skills. We created the European Competence Center for Cybersecurity, which is meant to promote skills. It is one of the main reasons why we created it. We have even Erasmus funding, cybersecurity skills. We have the Pact for Skills that is done under the employment hat that has specific cybersecurity skills pledges under aerospace and defense. So many, many different opportunities. So we're looking at how to house this together. Now, we need also something practical because this skills discussion has been going on and on for years. I was in the Munich Security Conference cybersecurity part a few months ago, and very rightly so, an American colleague said, you know what, I bet in a few years we'll be back here and we'll be discussing the same things when it came to skills. And it's true. I was there 5 years ago when we were discussing the same things. So I have stopped quoting numbers. We had quoted in our most recent strategy that we would be missing by 2035, not 250,000 jobs. I'm sure it's more. I don't know what the numbers are in Europe and in the US. I know they're huge. And in Europe, we also have this approach, the regulatory approach that we have applied also in cybersecurity. So we keep introducing legislation, standards, requirements, and somebody has to apply those. Somebody has to do this job. And we don't think there are enough people to do this job. But what jobs are we talking about? This is the first question. Who are we looking for? Because you may have studied cybersecurity, but by tomorrow, your skills are no longer relevant. You need to also reskill people, upskill people. So you can have cybersecurity experts, but can they do the job? So the first thing I think we need to do is to profile these jobs. We need to specify what kind of jobs are we looking for, and we need to prioritize. ENISA, and we have the colleague here who will tell us more, is preparing something that I think is one of a kind, this skills framework, that is about exactly profiling at least a number of jobs. We won't be able to do the full mapping, but mapping, I'm sorry if I'm taking some of your speaking points, colleague, but you know, we are very proud of what ENISA is doing. It's very important to profile. And then you have to take this profile and match it with actions. And when you take actions, I was very impressed with what you do. And I like also the part on equality and, you know, the social aspect, very important. But at the end of the day, it's all a bet. You make these programs hoping they will have an outcome. We don't have indicators. We don't have a way to measure this. By having a system by which we have a platform where people can register and look for opportunities, and then they also add what opportunities they have, we will be able to measure what kind of programs are successful, what programs achieve the target. So I think this is where we have to head now. I think we need to move from talking to doing. When I got involved a few years ago to an initiative that is about skills called Women for Cyber. This is about addressing the lack of female skills because we have very few females, as we have in all the sector of technology, unfortunately. And the first thing we did, we wanted something practical, is to create a database in which experts, female experts in cybersecurity could register themselves. It became very popular, this database, simply because there's also this very topical discussion about having women on panels. So many people go on this database to find female speakers. It's already good enough. But it is also about creating a place where you have a hub of cybersecurity experts. It's whether they're men or women. We started with the women and we saw how successful it was, because people who work on security are not necessarily very extrovert. They don't necessarily talk about their job. It's a culture of security. You keep it to yourself. And but at the same time, they have a pride about working in security, and we need to valorize them by creating this kind of hubs. So this is the kind of approach we want to take: practical pledges from the industry, working together in the public sector, because we will be requiring more and more. Yesterday, and I'll close with that, I attended a negotiation on a piece of legislation in Europe called the critical resilience. And this was a proposal to amend a piece of legislation we've had for 20 years in Europe on protecting critical infrastructure. This is the outside. This is not the information systems. And we wanted to bring it into par with the NIS directive that you all know, because you look like a knowledgeable audience, the one that is about protecting the information systems of critical infrastructure. We've gone very far in Europe. We've included in the scope of these pieces of legislation, public administration. We've included the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry. So not just the traditional critical infrastructures like transport, energy, banks, healthcare, but we've added more and more. Who is going to do this job? We are asking companies to invest. Many of them think it is sufficient to buy your services, and that's already a very important step, but you need people to apply the cybersecurity standards, and we don't have these people. And we have promised that by the end of this year, most probably in September, as you know, we had a consultation on that recently with the Cyber Resilience Act. The Cyber Resilience will bring cybersecurity standards on all products and services, like we have done for product safety in the past. I remember when I worked in product safety, we had authorities come and tell us, we don't have enough people to enforce the rules. How are we going to do it for these standards? So we need also the public sector to be endowed with more skills, and that means changing the mentality. And I'll finish with an example. Changing the mentality also meaning valorizing people who work in this field. You have to bring people from many fields, because you need people in law enforcement, you need people in sociology, in psychology. Cybersecurity is not just about the infotech. It's about other skills as well, and we need to bring this in. But we also need to valorize and realize it's a different market. We were talking recently to the Belgian Cybersecurity Center that is doing an amazing job in reorganizing itself. And they have created for their national cybersecurity center a separate association so that they can hire people, reward them accordingly. They have people from all over Europe, not just from Belgium. So you see, they take another approach. And when I asked them, do you have vacancies? I said, no. They find people, but because they take a different approach. So this is also about changing our mentality. You can't put the cybersecurity skills people in the same basket as everybody else. So this is a little bit our thinking. I hope I wasn't too long, and I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you, especially for making this emphasis on walking the talk, on this issue. Now the word is to Victor Negrescu and rapporteur de shaping digital education policy by the European Parliament. So that's what.
So it's good again, like everyone said, to be back, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's also good not to see ourselves, of course, only on Zoom, but in the same time, to see people still connected on their phones when we speak at conferences. So we didn't get rid of this habit. That means that you got connected to the wireless. So I did the same when I came here to the conference. I got connected to your wireless, and I used the software to check the security of your software. It takes 5 minutes to break your wireless code. 7 minutes to get access to your cameras, and 10 minutes to get access to your phone, which shows that we are not so good in cybersecurity. So it's not only the case here. So of course, this is not the issue only for you. It's the issue of all the places that we're visiting and conference rooms. But it's a fact. that, we tend to consider cybersecurity as something that is not worth allocating too much resources to. And unfortunately, we do not give it significant importance, despite the fact that cybersecurity, in my opinion, is related to, or it's at the level of any type of human security issues. So we speak about, of course, disasters, we speak about fires, we speak about crime, but also cybersecurity. It's also an issue that is very much present in our daily lives and should be considered and treated as such as well, with the same type of resources, with the same type of efforts, with the same type of, let's say, public concern, and of course, the same type of involvement coming from the public administration. So therefore, of course, it means a different setting and a different approach. So of course, you mentioned very well, there are different initiatives at European level, different financial resources. To a certain extent, we can comment about the amounts. So for instance, on Digital Europe is 7.8 billion euros to this program, and only a couple of hundreds of millions of euros are being allocated to cybersecurity, which is insignificant sums in comparison to the needs. Even, medium companies in the field of cybersecurity are allocating more resources to train their staff than what we allocate at European level. So that means that we have really a problem. Despite this fact, of course, it seems that cybersecurity is an important concern for European citizens. So I've been part of the Conference for the Future of Europe. And I want to mention that in the recommendations made by citizens, they have two recommendations linked to cybersecurity. One is to reinforce our common initiatives in the field, and of course, the agency in the field. And the second one, of course, is developing this issue of skills at all levels. And this is why we have included this recommendation also in our report. We refer to two things in the report on digital education. One is to have a specific curriculum on cybersecurity at the earliest age possible, because there are different ways of approaching cyber threats. We have the cyber hygiene, we have different ways of dealing with this topic. First of all, is making people aware. Secondly, is developing skills, providing them with competencies in the field that can be used later on in a professional activity. So there are different ways of approaching it. And the second element that we have in our report is that referring to this idea of, let's say, increasing awareness as such at all levels and making sure that citizens, when they go online, but not only online, they know how to approach those different threats. In the same time, of course, if we look at the reality on the ground, we see that we have the European agency, but we don't have enough synergies at European level. We are doing quite well when it comes to threats that are strategically coming from outside Europe. We tend to deal quite well with that. But when we refer to, for instance, to private threats, like people taking your data or taking the data of a company and asking for a ransom and so forth, we are not so good in dealing with those particular elements. So if we look again at data, last year, this cost us around 8 billion euros, all those threats and all those problems that we faced. And this means 50 times more than in 2015. So you see how the threats have increased and how much they cost us. So we invest less than 1 billion euro in the Digital Europe program, but we will lose 80 billion every year. So there is a problem if we make this comparison. Of course, there are other resources, among which also in the recovery and resilience programs, you have specific allocation of cybersecurity. But again, there are huge gaps between member states. You have countries that do not allocate any resources to that, and you have countries that allocate a couple of billion euros. In the same time, what we noticed in those different initiatives is that they do not cooperate. We don't see countries cooperating between each other on this matter. So you have, for instance, Romania or Italy investing in cybersecurity, but their specific programs financed, so the recovery and resilience plans are not correlated with what France or Germany is doing, despite dealing with, again, with global threats. And in the same time, like you underlined really well, the Belgium case, we show that, with these type of situations, we can really approach them in a common way at European level. And in the recommendation on the Conference for the Future of Europe, you have this specific recommendation of having Europe taking a leading role, a more prominent role in dealing with that issue. So of course, you know the issues, you know the problems. The difficulty right now is to identify the proper solution. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to all those issues, but we really need to raise the profile and try to give more visibility to the concrete solutions to, first of all, reinforce the sector. And Europe has a strong sector in the field, more than 60,000 companies, 600 cybersecurity centers across Europe. We also have this cybersecurity competence center, which is in my country, in Romania, in Bucharest, and we are really happy to have it. So there are things going on, but really we need to increase the pace, but also convince decision makers and also the guys in the Commission dealing with the budget that we need to get the money in order to deal with this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Victor, especially for mention two specific issues related to this cybersecurity market. First of all, you basically say that cybersecurity market has a typical market failure because the market does not deliver the optimal quantity of investment. You say we invest 1 billion and we get 8 billion of damage. And so it's very clear that there is a discrepancy here. Okay, and also the need of better coordination, cooperation among the member states. As a SEPS, we in 2018 we have suggested the creation of a cyber defense agency, much more operational than ENISA, and exactly to coordinate all this activity. But I think that this idea is little by little is gaining momentum because at least now the Commission has proposed the cybersecurity unit, and it's a step forward, I think, in that direction. Now I'd like to give the floor to Vishal Salvi, CISO of Infosys. Vishal?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. I hope I'm audible.
Yes. We're very well.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, yeah. Good morning to all of you. And unlike the panelists before me, I am still on Zoom, not because of the pandemic, but because of the logistics. I couldn't be there. I wish I was in the beautiful Brussels today morning. But it's great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. When we talk about the skills gap and we talk about the talent in the cybersecurity industry, I always go back, to my initiation in cybersecurity way back in 2000. And in those days, we used to always get into cybersecurity by accident. It was not by choice because it was not a very defined career opportunity or option in those days. But 2 decades, and seeing the transformation that has happened from the IT security to information security to now cyber security, and perhaps in future digital security, a lot of things have changed, and cyber has become deeply mainstream, and therefore a very good career option for individuals, not just to build a career, but also create value for the ecosystem, right? And so if you look at my role, I have twofold roles within Infosys. I'm the global CISO responsible for protecting Infosys and our clients' information and processes. And the second role that I have is really driving the cybersecurity business across all our customers, predominantly in North America and in Europe. So we have a lot of our customers in the European countries for whom we provide cybersecurity services. So when I'm going to talk about, I'll talk about some of the interventions and some of the strategies that we have executed to address this challenge, because I know clearly, the fellow panelists have defined the problem very clearly. So I'll just talk about some examples of how we have, in our own way, looked at how do we actually address this gap and how do we fundamentally create the capacity which is required for the world to solve this problem and get the right sentinels to be able to, be there and create that value. So when you look at, how do we build that strategy? One of the things that has really worked well for us is about really catching the talent young, at the very early stages. So a lot of the people, I have around 5,000 people in my team, which are focused on working for our customers, and around 500 member team internally within the CISO office responsible for protecting Infosys. So it's a very large team, and it needs to be retained. It needs to be motivated. It needs to be stable to be able to deliver on the mission that we have. And one of the things that has really worked well for us is to build this team at a freshers level. So we have a very well defined program for attracting young graduates from the colleges. And then what we have done is we have partnered with Purdue University, and they've been our partners for last 3.5 years. And we actually identify those cohorts and do a 6 weeks to 8 weeks of a cybersecurity intense program certified by Purdue before we introduce them into production. And that helps them to understand the fundamental principles of cybersecurity, which in my mind are very important for them to then be able to build the technical expertise and the necessary domain that they need to then work on as they build their careers in cyber. So we focus on foundational principles and foundational knowledge, not really working on products and solution at that stage. And then of course we have regular interventions after they come into production to get into necessary certification, various technologies that they need to work on. So that's one strategy which has really worked for us. And 70 to 80% of our hiring happens at that stage, and we do very little amount of lateral hiring, so that we are able to grow and give career paths for these young talents within the organization. The second thing that we have done is we have done partnership with large universities to create a program for MTech, the master's program for cybersecurity. And this is our third year, and we have 60 people cohorts which are taken from other faculties within Infosys, not necessarily from cyber. And we actually give them a 2 years of sabbatical from their roles in Infosys, where they go and complete their MTech program from this university, which is a curriculum created by Infosys for these individuals. And once they come back, they not only get into cybersecurity, but they get elevated into their roles, and we are able to create a middle management capacity within the organization, right? And this is our third year of successfully running that program. And every year we are increasing the number of people in the cohorts so that we are able to drive this. And it's a win-win situation because we are able to initiate people from other faculties into cyber. We are able to fund their MTech program, and we are able to give them elevations when they come back into the organization. The third thing which has worked, and this is largely the evangelization that CISOs and other leaders are doing within the industry, is about mentorship and guiding individuals who are undergrads and actually are aspiring to have careers in cybersecurity. And I think for it to be done at scale, every cybersecurity leader needs to start these mentoring programs. I personally get involved in a lot of mentoring. And in today's, young talent are deeply distracted by various things happening around them. And so they need those coaches and mentors for them to be guided into the field of cybersecurity, and then help them in terms of, coaching them as to what are the right decisions that they need to make and how much time they need to invest before they look at their next career moves in cyber. So that's another thing that has worked quite well. And, I know myself and a lot of my colleagues are actually investing their time in that mentorship. So, there are these various interventions that are possible. We actually also run a very large refactoring program where we use, again, Purdue as a curriculum for, getting folks from different parts of our service lines, not cyber, into refactoring and then getting repurposed into cybersecurity. And that again helps them to kickstart their career in cyber. So while I talk about this, I think the last thing I wanted to talk about is really the role that services industry like us have a play in terms of addressing the skill gap and also addressing this real challenge in terms of a need to really manage the cybersecurity across various industries. And we all know that at this stage, as we speak, the cybersecurity problem is very complex, right? There are so many tools to be, looked at. You need to make sure that every single person is understanding how to configure the tool. There are investment to be made in terms of right architecture. We need to have people available with the right passion and motivation to be working in your organization, especially if cybersecurity is not your core. And so that's really where global system integrators like us come in, where we are able to create a model of shared services which can then be able to create that value with automation, with shared services approach, and quick time to value. So I think it's a combination of all of these things which are required to really address this big imbalance that we currently have between the demand and the supply. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Lorenzo.
Thank you very much, Vishal, and especially for putting this emphasis on the problem of the university, but we'll come back to this in the discussion. Now I will give the floor to Fabio Di Franco from ENISA. Also, unfortunately, Victor has to leave in a few minutes, and so we thank him for coming, but he has some engagement in the parliament. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Sorry for being remotely, but as you know, probably we are in Athens. It was difficult to arrange the flight at the last minutes. So I want to just summarize a bit some point that has been done from the previous speaker. Brian first said that 2.7 million people, cybersecurity experts, are missing all over the world. And I will add that also in Europe, the estimation say that this number are 360,000. Vishal say that partnership between his company and university has been successful, and the mentoring is one way also to alleviate this skill gap, at least for his company. Victor analyzed a bit that there is a different approach used at different national level, and there is no coordination among them. And the spin in some way connect to what I will talk now in the next 10 minutes. So let me share my screen and sorry, wait a moment. Yeah. Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk to you about this initiative that we started 2 years ago. It's about the European Cybersecurity Skill Framework. This is one initiative that many ENISA does, and this one we think is more important because it's a central point for cybersecurity skills. So how to link different initiatives that are done all over Europe from different partners, and how to, in some way, approach from one high-level holistic point of view. Here we analyze the problem. There are two problems, as well say from Lorenzo. One is the numbers, the skill shortage, what is in the literature say. And the other is the skill gap. So the skills shortage is about the numbers. The skill gap is about skills, which skills are needed. How to create these skills in the same person, can be in different people, doesn't matter. I mean, you can have multiple skills. You can have plenty of confidence, or you can be specialized and have one particular skills. And this, I want to let you reflect, because the pandemic has been a good enabler, because all the processes in the organization has been transformed. Everything is online. But online means that we need ICT systems that are resilient and secure. And also, I will say also easy to use, because this element has to be together. You cannot have a secure environment impossible to use. So you need specialization. You need expertise to make Europe cyber secure in the way that we are able to protect network and information systems. But also you need also to teach employee on awareness level what are the threats in the digital world. It's not uncommon that you receive an SMS with a malicious link. You have to know how to recognize it. I mean, a person receive SMS from pretending Amazon, and likely I didn't have any parcel that I was expecting. If you know, I would have probably clicked. So what ENISA does with this initiative is to create a common language across organization and member state on cybersecurity skills in order to allow easy communication among stakeholders, and in particular among skill demand side, so organization who has to hire cybersecurity expertise, and the supply side, training providers, university, who need to develop the expertise. How we approach the problem. 2 years ago, we start with an expert group done from 17 experts, all coming from 17 European countries. Gender balance, also from different background, some from academia, other from companies, other one from public administration. So what the goal of this group was to create this common understanding between role, competency, skills, and knowledge in order to facilitate the cybersecurity skill recognition, support the design of cybersecurity related training programs. And we also put some principle, some idea that how the framework should look like. We want a framework which is easy to understand for not expert, because we want that it is possible to use it from the recruitment perspective. So people who are not expert in cybersecurity. But provide also enough detail for experts. We want also a framework which is flexible and scalable. This framework uses a modular approach and a flexible structure. So the framework enables each component to be extendable and used independently in the future to cater the needs of a specific sector. And also we want a framework which is open, impartial, and European. As the Spinance say, we have a European way of life. So we have European value. And this is important and is incorporated in this framework. The framework is open because all the ENISA work is open, impartial because this is a stakeholder group plus validation with external stakeholder has guaranteed that there is no bias in this framework. And what are the main benefits that this framework provides? This framework provides a link between organization, training provider, and individual. So if I look for a risk manager, I will know what I need, what are the tasks that the risk manager need to do, what are the skills and the knowledge that the risk manager has to do. So individual has a mapping between jobs and courses, programs. This is also valid for organization and training provider. And so having all the ecosystem adopting this skill framework will provide an easy understanding of the problem of the skill gap, because this is the main issue. We don't have only one profession. We have a group of professions in cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is not only a technical domain, but is also done from as an approach human level, very important. There is a regulatory approach, and there is also management organization approach. So we come out with 12 profiles, which according to us represent 90% of the market in Europe. So market in cybersecurity, let's say. So we have the Chief Information Security Officer, that in a small organization can be just an information security officer. We have a cyber incident responder or a SOC, someone working a SOC. We have a cyber legal policy compliance officer, so with a background in law mostly, a cyber threat intelligence specialist, a cybersecurity architect who should design systems which are secure but also easy to use, cybersecurity auditor, an educator who teach cybersecurity to technical people but also to all the other employees, cybersecurity implementer, which can be a system administrator, cybersecurity researcher, cybersecurity risk manager, digital forensic investigator, a penetration tester. Now, connecting to Lorenzo that was saying automation will facilitate certain job. I mean, will reduce the need of certain people. Yes, certain roles like a penetration tester or a cybersecurity incident responder are their job can be simplified by automation. This is true. Through machine learning, you can have more correlation and you can understand better what is happening in the network and identify immediately in a simple way the problem. So it need less human intervention, but still at the end you need people who are able to understand what is going on. Also because I guess you don't have a machine sometimes, you have a person which know also your defense mechanism and try to avoid. So it's a bit more complex than what we have seen. And sorry, and now I want to show you a bit one profile, how it look like. So this is CISO. So I want to focus a bit how we create this profile. We have a profile title, we have alternative title, we have a summary statement and mission, then we have a list of main tasks, key skills, key knowledge, and then a connection to another framework, another European standard, which is called the Competency Framework, which is a framework for IT professional, because most of the time, still cybersecurity is linked with the IT department. And so you need this connection. Inside also the key skills, we put some soft skills because soft skills are important. And obviously these one are only key skills. This one is extendable. More skills are needed if you have to create a curriculum at the university level or training. But these are for us are the key skills. And with this, I pass the floor to Lorenzo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabio, to point out, in practice, what is this framework and how should be used. Now we have about 20 minutes. So I would like to open the floor for discussion.
Thank you very much, and very interesting conversation today. My name is Goran Gotov. I work for BlackBerry. I represent the company before the European institutions. To Despina's point, and also some of the remarks that Victor made. But unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But it is indeed a very complex issue, especially as when it comes to education and policies that are related to skills. Soft policy. I mean, there is quite a lot of subsidiarity principles. So member states basically have different approaches in how they are implementing strategies to attract new talent or to foster education and so on. Probably, there is a way how we can streamline this from the European level. That would be with the Cybersecurity Competence Center, perhaps. One of the things I was thinking about while listening to the panelists was, could we potentially use the strategic annual work program that will be set by the governance board of the Cybersecurity Competence Center to identify training programs or pilot projects that could be implemented by the public-private partnerships at national level? So a very concrete example, you are a company that wants to invest in cybersecurity skills. You could participate in the cybersecurity community that will be providing input and will be applying for research projects. through the Competence Center. Is this something that could be considered, and would the Commission, for instance, want to introduce such a model where some of the Digital Europe funding would be used for that purpose, and in conjunction with private investment and private training programs? That is one of the questions. And then I just wanted to close my question just by also saying that a very good example of how skills shortage is a serious issue is that we also see that for the time being the executive director of the Competence Center hasn't been appointed yet. So I think that job placement is still open, and candidates are there is an acting, but it's a commission official. Yes, indeed. So looking forward also to seeing who will take the lead. With the fixed term. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much. The short answer to your first question is yes, of course. This is the way we're going to channel the funds available in Digital Europe program for skills that have been earmarked already through programs that will be going through the Competence Center's governance for approval. People have to lobby for these programs. We want to sort of get out of the traditional type of research projects where we have been funding for years only for projects to be then shelved, because by the time they're materialized, their subject is no longer so topical. So it's very important that we do that. And yeah, this is why we created the Competence Center. The Competence Center has an executive director, is an acting one, so it's not like it's not working. It's still at its infants, but we should not have the impression that it is headless. Actually, he has a very skillful person, because it's a person who's been leading the operational cybersecurity unit of the European Commission. So if we're talking skills, he definitely has them.
Other question from the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a question to Despina, actually. We have a couple of people here coming from the public administration in Germany. And you mentioned, well, public administration will probably need to change the mentality to attract the people you need. And you mentioned, or you raised a very important point, namely wages or payment. You need to valorize the people. However, I don't think the public administration can compete with Ryan's company, with Vishal's company. And also, a very large governmental entity in Austria has taken a different path, saying, well, we can compete based on payments, but we can say you have work-life balance with us. So they did a different kind of employer branding, saying, we know we need to do something with the payment schemes, but let's take another approach. So I was just wondering, what other points or what other aspects do you see in the things about changing mentality of the public administration to attract the people we need?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, there are two elements very pertinent to your question. There's ethos, and then there's reality. On the ethos side, I would tell you that for every job, the equivalent between the public sector and the private sector is always disproportionate. I was a lawyer in the private sector when I started my career. I went to the public sector. I will never reach the salary I had back then. You don't work just for money. You work also for other reasons. So I think deciding to work for the public sector in cybersecurity has a certain profile of people who are not the people who will look only at the financial reward. As you rightly say, work-life balance. Well, we shouldn't think that in the private world there's no work-life balance. That wouldn't be very healthy. But there are the considerations. There is a steadiness. There is a public service approach. Many reasons. People who do not like changing jobs very often, whereas in the private sector you have a turnover, you move. So that's the ethos part. And then there's the reality. The reality is that it is a very demanding job. It requires very specific skills, continuous upskilling, high stress. Talking about work-life balance, it's not just about the hours, it's also the quality. The people who are managing law enforcement, cybercrime, I cannot imagine, it's very difficult to imagine the stress levels I have to deal with. So this you need to reward. So this is why I'm quoting without any hesitation the Belgian example, which I was very happy to discover, by which instead of putting people under the sort of public administration system, they've created a separate trade association or something equivalent. I don't know exactly the model, by which they can hire people in better market conditions and bring them also from other countries. There's no requirements of nationality, etc. So I think we need to look for such models. Then there is another problem. Even if you have, because I really like what you've done, Lorenzo, this separation between the shortage and the gap. Because you may address the gap and find the people, but will you ever have enough? Lorenzo rightly pointed out to a gap we have in the EU on the operational side. This is why we proposed the joint cyber unit. But some member states, some of which you mentioned, came and told us, wait a minute. Okay, so it's a fantastic idea. You pull together our cybersecurity experts. So in case there is a big crisis in one member state, they all run and they fix it. But what if I have the same crisis in my member state? Am I going to take my people and send them elsewhere? I need them where I have the crisis. And that's a very fair point. So this is where we may have to think of more creative ways of pooling resources and public-private partnerships. This is a very daring approach because we're talking security, but we may have to do it. We may have to certify people and then call upon these people when we need them because they're trusted providers. We need to come up with these models as well, there to address more the shortage than the gap.
I would like to now ask a question to Brian. He pointed out this issue of the use of AI machine learning and how to use this to to approach the skill shortage. And I would like to understand better how this work, what you are doing on this issue, and this hybrid approach that you are fostering, how it's work in practice, and if you think that can have a broader scope, but only also with the reference to the European skill framework, only on specific task. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I thought what Fabio presented on the skills framework is very important. And we talked about that earlier as well. What are the roles, right? So I'll talk about one specific role that I think is important, which is in the Security Operations Center. That's an area where the skill shortage is very acute. It's an area where many of the companies are trying to protect themselves and the service teams that are helping them, folks like Vishal's company, have a hard time getting operators to be actually at the keyboard. I think that's one of the main areas that we're focused with machine learning is how do you begin to do, within our software, we have what's called guided investigations, which really goes through a lot of the data sets and brings up or curates for the operator where they should be looking, which of course makes them more efficient. So you can have less operators if you're more efficient and if the technology can do a piece of it. So if you've got machine learning that can go out and look at a potential anomaly in email and correlate that with something that's happening in the network, and then put that together on the endpoint and show that to the operator, they're doing a lot less work, which makes it much better and more efficient. So I do think, obviously we're focused today on the talent piece and it's not going to go away, as I said. However, we definitely can help by leveraging machine learning, by leveraging artificial intelligence, by leveraging data science. And that's really where we're focused every day, is to build better software that's more efficient so that our customers can use less people. But we'll never get to a point where we reduce the people to not need it at all.
Yeah. Still on these issues, one of the, as I mentioned before, we have done this task force on AI and cybersecurity. By the way, there are a copy of the report that you can take and bring with you as a gift from today. And But one of the issues that came out, especially for instance, let's say AI can help in find vulnerabilities, so vulnerability disclosure. But also we mentioned this issue of de-skilling. In other words, we should, like for instance, now AI is used to improve X-ray readings, okay? But we find out that the best solution is to combine, let's say, the doctor with the machine. So I think that we mentioned that if we leave only to the machine the role of finding vulnerabilities, people will lose capacity to find vulnerabilities. So there is this issue of the skilling.
Yeah, I think it's both. I talked about the operating side, and there's also on the vulnerability side. And I think it's the hybrid approach that works best. And where the technology can, again, I'll use the term curate, can prioritize, and then the people can make the judgment calls that are needed there. But it's really putting those two things together. I think that's what's illustrated here in the report, and in practice. That's where most of our investment and innovation is going, right? Into machine learning that makes the ability to have capabilities enhanced by the people that execute.
Anybody has any question? Okay, a question for Vishal. I know that you are opening, an head office in Bucharest of your company. Can you tell us more about it? Because, in Bucharest, there is this Competence Center. So maybe you have in mind some type of cooperation. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, we have a global cyber defense center in Bucharest operating for more than 2 years now. And it's a 100-seater cyber defense center. It's one of the 7 global cyber defense centers that we have in the world. And the whole strategy is about tapping the talent across the globe, right? It's not about concentrating in one location like India or any other place, because cybersecurity talent is across the globe, and you need to tap that talent and create that expertise at that center. And the advantage of something like a cyber defense center is that the moment you have a problem at any particular customer, you have access to the talent across the globe, right? And that becomes a great advantage for us. And besides the fact that Bucharest is actually has a great pool of cybersecurity talent, and we were glad that we were there at the right time, to tap that and build that center over there, Lorenzo.
Okay, thanks. Now also a question for Fabio. If you can tackle a little bit better the issue of how to involve the academia, the university, in this, in how to approach this issue of skill shortage, because we have. I know that ENISA is developing activity in this area.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, ENISA is doing many activity, and we also look from at the university side, how much capacity has university in order to build cybersecurity expert. And I want to show you some data, because these are important numbers that maybe you have in mind, and what we are doing to understand better the problem from the supply side. So I mean from the university side, because at the end, most of the job require in cybersecurity require a degree. So we launched 2 years ago this database. This is a collaboration done with other European project that they are going to finish, or they finish already, and we incorporated their work and we created this database. This database lists the university program in cybersecurity, and we list at the moment more than 120 cybersecurity programs. This is a crowdsourced database, so it means the university must apply, and must have some respect some criteria. So what we check is if the course is really in cybersecurity and if it is approved by the member state. And so typically the process works in this way. The academia submits a decree, we validate and we categorize the plan of study depend on 3 categories: 1 technical, 1 organization, and 1 law. And then we publish in the ENISA website. And the result also, we collect also some other information from the academia. So for example, we know how many, based on this sample that we have, 120 programs, we know each year how many students are enrolled at the first year in the program. So we can predict in some way in 2 years, 3 years time, depending if it's a bachelor or a bachelor, how many students will terminate, probably will graduate if they succeed. And comparing, for example, the 2020 with the 2021 data, we see that we have a small increase of 80% of students enrolled, but we still, as gender balance, unfortunately, we still have a strong predominance of male respect to female, so 81% versus 19%. So these data for us are important to understand not so much about the real number, because this maybe is not representing 100% the cybersecurity program in Europe, but these also give us trends to understand how the new professional will, how many the new professional will be. And this concludes my presentation.
Thanks. We have 1 minute. I don't know if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I will have a last question for Despina. You know, when we talk about skills, maybe being Italians, I'm always in my mind Leonardo da Vinci, a multidisciplinary approach. So we talk a lot about coding, STEM. We need to increase STEM presence, STEM component. But what about adding also arts from STEM to STEAM? In other words, do we need, especially for soft skills, also a little bit of humanistic components in the skills overall?
In cybersecurity, for sure, it is completely interdisciplinary. And I mentioned earlier, you need to have from social sciences people, because the development of cybercrime is growing. And that can only be addressed not only through law enforcement, but also through sociology, psychology. You need a lot of experts. But you need, of course, to upskill them with the understanding of the cybersecurity specifics. That's not very difficult to do. There are courses out there, but again, not everybody knows where to find them, and we need to create accessible ways for these trainings. But absolutely, you need people who understand law, you need people who understand economics. So we need also to create an ecosystem of jobs for cybersecurity, and this is where the profiling helps, that goes beyond those who sit behind the computer. And this is how we will also be able to bring some of the people who use their skills not necessarily for the noble causes, but to bring them to the right side of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that, we run out of time, and I think I thank all of you for participating, the speakers, Trialex to funding this event. And I think it was a very, very interesting meeting. Also, personally, I learned a lot. I hope that everything did. Okay, thank you very much. Also to Fabio and to the other speaker. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Okay, you're welcome.